this Aer Lingus pilots dispute, and we had Mark Tighe of IALPA on the show last Friday morning, and it's there on podcast if anybody wants to pick it up from our over 5,500 podcast items now in the archive. But so you've got a script to play out, and last week the two sides in the Aer Lingus dispute met at the Labour Court, and then the Labour Court came out and says, well, there's nothing I can do for these lads. And then the weekend we had the 8-hour strike, we have more work to rule stuff and all of that. But now we had more talks yesterday with them shuttling from room to room, and the Labour Court came through last night or early this morning and issued a formal invitation. Now, when the Labour Court issues a formal invitation, the quiet script here, in my experience, is the Labour Court knows what it needs to do. And it's got a plan. And when it has a formal invitation, it brings the two sides in, and it's like a court case. And the Labour Court puts the plan to both sides and says, lads, get your heads together now and sort this out. So when you have a formal invitation to talks, with an indication afterwards that the Labour Court will actually make a recommendation after that, you're kind of making progress. Eoghan Corry, travel journalist, editor of the Air and Travel magazine, joins me once again on the show. Eoghan, good to have you back. This is a major move. The Labour Court doesn't invite you in unless it has something to put before you. Isn't that right? Good morning.
The Labour Court and progress from the last day when the Labour Court sort of said, oh lads, there's nothing in common here. Let's put it back into July. So we have basically doing their homework today, and they're both being called into the headmaster's office tomorrow, and the homework will be examined. And as you say, the Labour Court will come out with a recommendation. What we saw last night was Mark Tighe appearing in front of the cameras, as he does. Aer Lingus shuffled away quietly. He said that he blamed Aer Lingus for introducing new conditions and bringing them to the Labour Court. So what I think Mark Tighe, it may be tactical, what Mark Tighe is lining us up for, that the IALPA are not happy and they may reject the Labour Court ruling, which is the second time they've done that. That means back to strikes, because in the meantime, they are having their work to rule, but they are not having their one-day strikes that caused all those cancellations last Saturday. It's all in the air, as you say. There's a dance, or as you say, a script that they follow. They're within about 4 blocks of where Taylor Swift was dancing the night away 3 nights in a row at the weekend. And the choreography in the Labour Court probably matches some of what happened to Taylor Swift.
Yeah. You mentioned there about what Mark Tighe said when he came out of those talks yesterday. That kind of, in my mind, Eoghan, kind of fits a script as well, because he now is an experienced negotiator, and I spoke to him at some length on the programme last Friday morning. He is an experienced, super negotiator, well known for and good at what he does. He now knows that the Labour Court is going to bring something to the table. He has known since day one his pilots aren't getting 24%. They know they're not getting 24%. He now has some indication of what the Labour Court will bring forward. Similarly, Aer Lingus, they know they're going to have to give more, and the Labour Court has an idea that they're going. So what you're going to have tomorrow is, okay, guys, what are we going to agree on here that nobody loses any face in this?
There was a CEO of Aer Lingus. Aer Lingus, for the first 60 or 70 years of their existence, only had 3 CEOs. And Michael Dargan was the second of those. And he used to say to his negotiators, because Aer Lingus had a strike every summer, he used to say, lose a bit of face, lads, you have a lot of it.
Yeah.
That's basically how industrial relations has always worked. That was back in the 60s. And nothing has changed since. How do you save face publicly and then do the deal behind closed doors? So what Mark Tighe said may have been tactical. We're really unhappy with this. And then when they agree to something, he gathers some of the credit because they're really losing out on public support, basically because the pilots' pays are so high. 250,000 looking for a 49,000 increase. That's more. The increase is more than the salaries of some of the people whose holidays are being ruined.
Although on Friday, when I spoke with Mark Tighe, Eoghan, we were surprised here at the Opinion Line, the level of public understanding of where he was coming from, and some of that coming into outright support. There's something about more pilot hours. Now, am I right in this statistic? You'll tell me straight off if I am. Am I right that Aer Lingus pilots fly approximately 10 hours less per week than, say, Ryanair pilots?
Yeah, that's part of the what's called the crewing agreement. It's being mentioned all the time. Nobody has a clue what it is. But, okay, here's what happened, PJ, in my read. 2019, the Aer Lingus feel they gave away too many hours to the pilots. Now, it was part of a broader package, and the pilot hours were reduced to below what would be normal across Europe. Aer Lingus management and possibly IAG management, because Aer Lingus are part of a 4-airline group, are looking at this saying that's something we need to get back. So when you look through this 24%, Aer Lingus see an opportunity. And it's complicated, as I've said in this programme before. There are 26 different levels of pilots that pay, and there's also the agreements, which are a Rubik's Cube. They're very complex. So they've loads to talk about when they talk about, when they get talking face to face. The real problem has been getting to them to this stage. And wouldn't it have been lovely if we done all of this in February, and people's holidays and plans, and people staying up, awake at night, worrying about their holidays? Ain't that the truth? Could it be avoided?
I probably overstated the difference in hours because, as you said, there's so many different layers to it. But they do fly fewer hours than Ryanair, who are paid less.
Norm, yeah.
Who are paid less as well at the same time.
Well, that's an interesting thing because they're I've always said that Aer Lingus pilots are paid less, but IALPA have come back and said that Ryanair are paid less. It's very hard to make a case by case basis, even with other airlines, because Aer Lingus are chasing the rates of pay that Air France would get, and then American Airlines are the highest paid of the US airlines. So when you see figures being thrown around, it confuses the whole issue, and it ends up with the general public seeing this match of two people saying my data is better than your data, and they just get confused and abandon all the figures in the end.
Yeah. Ryanair also have spare planes and can get people out of a hole more quickly, which also.
But they have a bigger fleet. They've just announced their figures for June. 19.3 million passengers in June. They're going to be one of the first airlines to carry 20 million in a month in July, and a rolling annual of 188. Aer Lingus' annual figure is 12 million figures in the year. So they're different type. Aer Lingus' fleet is over 500. Ryanair's fleet size is over 500 aircraft. Aer Lingus' is 55. So when the strike was being contemplated, and we don't know the scale of it, and we still don't know the scale should this break down. Ryanair have generally nine aircraft sitting on the ground. They're there in case an aircraft goes tech. They can go tech anywhere in Europe because Ryanair's business is Europe-wide. Only 4% is in Ireland. But they have spare aircraft, which is my information they're prepared to give to Aer Lingus to get through the strike.
Yeah. This purchase of new planes by Aer Lingus that seems to come out now on the same day as we hear about the Labour Court intervening. What's all that about? Could that affect things here?
It's basically the IAG buy aircraft. It's very hard to get on the order book. The order book is full to the end of the decade for short haul, for narrow body aircraft. A little bit more room with wide body aircraft. A couple of things are happening that have been well publicised. Boeing's supply of new aircraft has come down to a trickle because of their safety issues. I was out in Seattle last week for a series of briefings on that. Airbus are ramping up production, but it's slower than it should be. So to get on the order book is a big deal. IAG are on the order book. And here's the rub, PJ. They decide which of the 4 airlines, and they're going to have a 5th, Air Europa, joining them, which of them get the new aircraft. We had 2 new aircraft to come to Aer Lingus. One of them was actually painted with that beautiful shamrock. It's been repainted in the Iberia colours, and it's going to start on Barajas to Boston instead of one of the Aer Lingus routes it was supposed to do.
So Mammy has the biscuits. Be a good boy, you won't get the biscuits.
And the biscuits are being distributed in Madrid.
I see.
The different airlines have to sort of wag their tails and look up lovingly and say, these are my plans, this is my growth, this is how I'm going to make money for the group. Aer Lingus is a very small part of that group. So the IALPA negotiations and the hardline stance by the pilots has actually, ruffled those Aer Lingus plans. 2 of the aircraft that were to come to Aer Lingus, their growth plans for next year, they're already in chaos.
I see. I was reading at the weekend, Eoghan, and I thought the first chance I had to ask you, I would, that in the worst case scenario, or in a grenade situation here, IAG could just go, okay, Aer Lingus is gone. We'll put one of the others in there.
Yeah.
Worst
it's
case?
unlikely that the brand would go. If you look at the IAG accounts every year, the brand that is valued the highest, even ahead of British Airways, is Aer Lingus. That's the decades of work that was done, particularly in the North America, and that amazing smile, and that when you see the green jacket when you get on the aircraft, all of that. It's such a strong brand. But we've seen strong brands disappear before. Pan Am and TWA, you see them in the old movies, Priscilla and Elvis, and Sabina, famous Belgian airline, Swiss Air. All of those, I worked for a newspaper that was closed by industrial action that many of your listeners would never have heard of. The Sunday Press, Evening Press, Irish Press.
I'm old enough.
Absolutely, but brands can disappear. What I suspect would happen in the grenade situation is that a lot of the Aer Lingus aircraft would be reflagged as British Airways or Iberia, and a skeleton service be kept coming to and from Dublin. But the expansion that we've seen, Aer Lingus direct to Seattle that I flew last week, Minneapolis, Hartford, Connecticut, Orlando, Miami, all of those other routes would probably not be in existence anymore. They'd be passed to somebody else.
Nobody wants
we'd be
us
left
to go
with
there.
Chicago, Boston and New York.
Nobody wants us going there. Eoghan, remember we laughed last week about the WhatsApp groups that where they say, lads, okay, wear yesterday's suit, don't shave. And
don't shave doesn't apply to Mark Tighe, we've said.
It's true, but for the other guys, he might wear yesterday's shirt and loosen the tie a small bit.
He didn't do a bad job last night. He did look a bit.
Could we? They've got to get their written submissions into the court today. The court will meet tomorrow. The court will probably go for hours and hours and hours and hours and hours. Are we looking at a very early morning breakthrough on Thursday, possibly negatively or positively?
What will happen is the submission will come back. IALPA will have to hold a ballot on it. It'll go back to the members, and then they will have a rejection or an acceptance. But it's not open-ended, because IALPA are one of the most loyal unions I've ever seen. When the executive recommends something, they give it a vote that Hoxha's Albania would have been proud of, 97, 98% in favour. They tend to be very united. And if the executive says, accept this, we're looking at a great end to this dispute. If the IALPA say reject this, it's quite clear they will reject it. And then IALPA will have cleared the restraints of FORSA, which stopped them serving its notice of industrial action last Friday, and we'll be in for a continuation of this series of one-day strikes.
Yeah, just very lastly on that, Eoghan, I said this to listeners on Friday. IALPA is just a tiny, tiny section of a much more massive union, Forsa. And again, taking various news reports and analysis over the weekend into account, Forsa seem a bit uncomfortable with where this is going.
Yeah, IALPA has come to this stage with undue haste. They've rejected the interventions. That's what really is annoying the politicians as well. You know, we have this series of safeguards. If you look back at reeling in the years, the very first reaction for every union when there was any other dispute back in the 70s, 80s, early 90s was down tools. And that we've come from that to a position where we had the National Implementation Board, which solved a couple of pilot disputes in its time, the pilot tribunal within Aer Lingus, the WRC and the Labour Court. We've all of these safety nets. And Forsa are unhappy that IALPA discarded or crashed through the safety net so quickly. We had a coup within IALPA. Mark Tighe took over from his predecessor. He'd always been critical, saying that they hadn't been tough enough with Aer Lingus. Pilots have enormous power. We see every airline in Europe being threatened with strikes on a yearly basis, and we should be doing more, was pretty much Mark Tighe's line. And now he's proven his case. The question is, has he proven enough in terms of industrial action for the passengers to finally relax and look forward to their summer?
He has certainly shown the company what they're capable of, and we'll see if they'll act on that. Eoghan, as always, thank you.